أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Previously, in our last class, we examined the mistakes in Salah that do not invalidate the prayer. Rather, you either just continue without having to correct anything, or you offer Sajdatay al-Sahw at the end of Salah, or you compensate for it after Salah and you do Sajdatay al-Sahw, or you just do Sajdatay al-Sahw. We examined 4 types of mistakes. Just to refresh our memory and to recap, what were those 4 types of mistakes? So give me an example of a mistake that you make in Salah because you forgot out of forgetfulness, but you don't need to do anything. You just continue your prayer. Give me an example of such a mistake. Yes, jahr and ikhfat. If you accidentally, in a prayer in which you're supposed to recite loudly with voice, you recite silently, such as the morning prayer or the Maghrib prayer. The minute you realize that you're reciting silently, continue the recitation. No need to start over with a voice. Just continue with a voice. That's one example. Can someone give us another example? When you make a mistake, just continue.
Forgetting Surah Al-Hamd.
Right. If you forget Surah Al-Hamd, when? After what?
After doing the Sujud.
After doing the ruku'. Because if you have not done the ruku' yet, you're in the surah. For example, you're reciting Surah Qul Huwallahu Ahad. You remember you forgot the Hamd. You go back and you have to recite Surah Al-Hamd. But there's nothing after that. No need for Sajdatay al-Sahw. No need to do anything else. Just go back. Now if you reach the ruku' and you remember that you forgot Surah Al-Hamd, what do? Nothing. Do you have to do the qada of the hamd later? No. You don't have to. So this was the first type of mistakes that we examined in our last class. Give me an example for the second type of mistakes. What was the second type? Yes.
So in that continuation, that if I'm hurrying up to catch the Jamaat, and the Jamaat is already going to the ruku, and my job is to go to the ruku, skip the Alhamd and
Salat al-Jama'ah has special rulings. We'll discuss it when we examine the chapter on Jama'ah. Yes, if you walk into the masjid and you join the Jama'ah and you realize the Imam just went to ruku', you don't have time to do Surah Al-Hamd and the surah afterwards. In that case, you go with the Imam to the ruku', because we have a special ruling here.
no compensation.
No compensation for it. No need to do anything. In fact, let's say you joined the Jama'ah. As soon as you said Allahu Akbar, the Imam went into ruku'. You don't have to recite anything. Just go to the ruku' immediately. That is an exception, because you want to join the Jama'ah. So that was, an example that we gave of a mistake that you don't really have to do anything for. Another type of mistake that we examined, give me an example of a mistake that you have to do Sajdatay al-Sahw for, and you have to make it up after Salah. Forgetting a sujood. If you forgot one sujood from your Salah, and you remembered, I forgot one sujood in my Salah, I skipped a sujood. Skipping a ruku' invalidates the prayer because you skipped a pillar. But if you skipped one sujood, not 2, you have to do 2 things to correct that. The first is do Sajdatay al-Sahw, which we'll talk about and we did talk about before. The second thing, do the qada of that sajda, make it up. Right after Salah, do one sujood, Subhana Rabbiyal A'la wa bihamdih, with the intention of what? Qada, because you skipped a sujood. So that is an example of a mistake that does not invalidate the Salah, but requires 2 things. One, Sajdatay Sahu. Second, the Qadha.
Sajdat.
Yes.
If you skip tashahhud, على الأحوط you have to redo it before sajda.
If you skip tashahhud, that is an example of skipping something in salah that does not invalidate it. Why? Because tashahhud is not a pillar, it's not a rukun. First of all, what do you have to do after salah?
Sajdatay sahu.
You do sajdatay sahu for skipping that tashahhud. What else do you need to do, the second thing? The qadha of the tashahhud. Because you skipped the tashahhud, you have to do the qadha of the tashahhud. So that's another example. And then we also gave an example of a mistake which just requires sajdatay sahu, but does not require you to make up anything or do anything.
Adding a rukn.
If you speak,
If you exactly, if you accidentally speak, you accidentally in your salah spoke. Somebody asked you a question, and you did not deliberately answer them. You accidentally answered them. You were not fully aware. That does not invalidate your salah. Just continue with your prayer. Do sajdatay sahu at the end because you spoke in salah. However, nothing else needs to be done. So these were the examples that we gave last time. Now let's talk about sajdatay sahu. We talked about how to do sajdatay sahu. Basically, before you get up and do anything, facing the qibla, it's mustahab to do the takbirah, it's not wajib. And you start by offering 2 sujuds. What do you say in the sujud? Well, okay.
Bismillah wa billah, assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabi.
Bismillahi wa billah, assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabiyyu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. That's the most common form that scholars recommend us to say. We said there's also an alternative. Instead of Bismillahi wa billah, assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabiyyu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, it's also optional to say what?
Bismillah wa billah, Allahumma salli ala.
Bismillahi wa billah, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. That's also optional, but most scholars state the first one that we stated is more recommended. You raise your head from the first sujood, do the second one. Then, after you raise your head from the second sujood, there is a tashahhud and a short salam. Now, some scholars, especially past scholars, it was their fatwa that this tashahhud, which you do after sajdatay sahu, is only mustahab and not wajib. What was their argument? Their argument was the following. They said, we have a number of hadiths from the Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them, which tell us how to do sajdatay sahu. A number of these hadiths in which the Imam alayhi salam is explaining to the narrator how to do sajdatay sahu, the Imam just tells him, do 2 sujud. He makes no mention of the tashahhud and the taslim. That means the tashahhud and the taslim is not a mandatory part of sajdatay sahu. Those other narrations which do mention tashahhud and taslim, we understand them to be mustahab only, a recommendation. Because if it were wajib, then these other hadiths had to mention them. This was their argument. That's why the fatwa of some scholars, a minority of maraji' and scholars in the past, was that the tashahhud and the taslim after sajdatay sahu is only mustahab. Scholars today, most of them disagree. They say no. We have a command, a clear command in some of these authentic hadiths that you have to do the tashahhud and the taslim. As for those other narrations which did not mention them, that does not mean that it's not wajib. Maybe the narrator did not narrate to us the full context. Maybe he just focused on the 2 sujuds and it was a given that you had to do a tashahhud and taslim. We don't know why it was not mentioned. But when we have a clear hadith that commands us and says, you do the tashahhud and the taslim, we don't have any evidence this was mustahab. So the general ruling is that we assume it is wajib. So most scholars, salamu alaikum, state that it is wajib. Now how is this tashahhud and taslim done? Scholars also have some different opinions here. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. The hadith which talks about the tashahhud that is done after Sajdatay Sahw states you do tashahhudan khafifan. Those who know Arabic, what does khafif mean? Light. Do a light tashahhud. Scholars have discussed amongst themselves, what does it mean to do a light tashahhud? For instance, we have the author of Al-Urwat al-Wuthqa. The author of Al-Urwat al-Wuthqa, Al-Yazdi, he was one of the greatest maraja of Najaf. He wrote a book on Islamic laws. His book is so rich in details, it became part of mainstream seminary books, such that today, any scholar who wants to give their opinions on legal rulings, they use his text as the basis. It's a very, very important book. It's called Al-Urwat al-Wuthqa. Now, in Al-Urwat al-Wuthqa, what does he say? He says, tashahhud khafif. The light tashahhud is the following. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. This is the light tashahhud. Scholars today object to him. They told him, where did you get this from? He could defend his opinion and he says, well, the hadith says light tashahhud. The bare minimum for you to witness for God and the Prophet is this. You can't reduce it to any less words than that. So this is the light tashahhud. That's the bare minimum that you have to do. You could do the regular tashahhud that we say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wahdahu la sharika lah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. That's the regular tashahhud. So when the hadith says do the light one, then just omit some phrases and do the bare minimum. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. That's the bare minimum, right? That's his argument. That's how he defends his opinion. The author of Al-Urwat al-Wuthqa. However, some scholars today object to him. They told him, we don't have a hadith which says, here's the short version of the tashahhud. Here's the light version. That has not been stated anywhere. So why are you assuming that this is the light version? When the hadith says do a light tashahhud, it's not explained to us what a light tashahhud is. It hasn't reached us, at least in the hadiths that we have. So some scholars today are saying that the short tashahhud is the regular one that we do in our salah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wahdahu la sharika lah. That's the short one. Why? Because if you look at the ahadith which talk about tashahhud, it is highly mustahab to do a long tashahhud. I know most of us has probably not done that even once in our lives. In fact, we have one tashahhud that's a full page long. You know, the imam, sometimes they would do this. Sometimes in your wajib salah, do some of these mustahab recommended acts. It really allows you to interact with your prayer. So the tashahhud that we have, the one that we do, is the bare minimum that we do. That's just the shortest version. There are much longer versions. Some of them I've seen a page long, a full page long in Arabic text. And they're beautiful tashahhuds. So scholars today are saying when the imam says do a light tashahhud, it means don't do those long ones. It doesn't mean do a shorter one than the already short one. So that's why scholars today are saying as a precaution, when you do the tashahhud for Sajdatay Sahw, do it just like you do it in your salah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wahdahu la sharika lah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. So that's the tashahhud that we do after Sajdatay Sahw. Then the taslim. In your salah, your normal salah, which is the wajib taslim as we examined last year? What is the wajib taslim that you have to say? That's not wajib, that's mustahab. What is the bare minimum wajib for taslim? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Or the second one that we say, Assalamu alayna wa ala ibadillah salihin. But most have said, Assalamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So if after the salawat in your salah, if after Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, you just say, Assalamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. That suffices. That's the taslim, that's wajib, and you end your salah. Yes, it's highly recommended to say 3 taslims. Assalamu alayka ayyuha an-nabiy wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alayna wa ala ibadillah salihin. Assalamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is recommended. In Sajdatay al-Sahw, we are commanded to observe the short taslim. Either you say Assalamu alaykum and end. Your Sajdatay al-Sahw is done. Or you say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The bare minimum is to say Assalamu alaikum. So remember this. If you ever do Sajdatay Sahw, you do the tashahhud. When you get to the taslim, don't say the 3 taslims like you normally do in your salah. Only do the very last one. And that very last one has 2 versions. The very short version, which is what? Assalamu alaikum. That's it. Or the second one, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. With that, you have offered Sajdatay Sahw. Any questions on Sajdatay Sahw?
Short question.
Yes.
You add a tashahhud in your salat, you need to do Sajdatay Sahw.
If you add a tashahhud, yes. If you accidentally add a tashahhud, your salah is valid because you did not add a pillar, but then you do Sajdatay Sahw at the end. Now, if you forget to do Sajdatay Sahw, a week later you remembered, a year later you remembered, what do? You do it qada. Well, you don't do the niyyah of qada, but what I mean, you make it up, you do it. Do the wudu, face the qibla, do the sujud. So whenever you remember Sajdatay Sahw, you have to observe it and fulfill it. Question, if someone deliberately does not do Sajdatay Sahw, he knows he made a mistake, he's like, you know what, I'm not going to do it anyways. Is his salah valid?
No. Yes.
His salah is valid. However, he what? Committed a sin. Meaning there's an obligation which was on him to do Sajdatay Sahw. He did not fulfill that obligation. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will hold him accountable for skipping that obligation. But the prayer in which he made a mistake in is valid. So not doing Sajdatay Sahw does not invalidate your salah. However, it constitutes a sin. It means you've missed an obligation. You had a question?
Yeah, why is it that we're commanded to do a short taslim and not a 3 taslim? Why are we not allowed to do
Because in Sajdatay Sahw, it's mainly to correct the salah, so Islam wants us just to use a very short version, probably to distinguish it from like your normal salah. So that's why the ahadith command us to do a short taslim. The real reason is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah knows best.
Even for normal salah, you can do the short taslim.
Yeah, even for the normal salah. But for Sajdatay Sahw, there is an emphasis on doing only the 1 taslim and not to do the longer one.
Is there a consequence of doing the 3? Because I've done it before and
If you did not do it deliberately, that's fine. If you did not know, that's okay. But from now on, just do the 1 taslim for Sajdatay Sahw. Another question. Is there Sajdatay Sahw in the nafila prayers? Salat al-Layl, the nafila mustahab prayers. If you goof in the nafila, you do one of these mistakes in the nafila. Is there Sajdatay Sahw? No, there isn't. Sajdatay Sahw is only in the mandatory salah. In the mustahab salah, there is no Sajdatay Sahw. In fact, whenever you doubt anything in your mustahab salah, just ignore the doubt and continue. It does not invalidate your salah. Even the shak in the ruku' of the nafila, just continue and do whatever your mind leans towards.
Or the number of rak'ah.
The number of you're praying Salat al-Layl, the first 2 rak'ah. You had a doubt. This is the first or the second. Ignore your doubt. This only invalidates the wajib salah if you have a doubt in a 2-unit prayer. In the nafila, it does not invalidate it. So there is no Sajdatay Sahw for any nafila. Even if you accidentally spoke, you forgot a tashahhud, you did any of these that we talked about, there is no Sajdatay Sahw in the nafila prayers. Only in the wajib prayers. Yes.
We know that if we do taslim after the second sajda and tashahhud, we have to do sajdatay sahw. What if I say as-salam and then I pay attention and then continue my salat? Do I have to say as-salamu alaykum?
So if you're in your second rak'ah, you're supposed to get up, you accidentally said as-salamu alaykum.
I didn't say alaykum.
Or as-salam.
Yeah.
Yes, you get up.
Yeah.
And then after your salah,
I do sajda.
you just do sajdatay. So because you said something that's extra. By the way, even if you did the full taslim, even if you said assalamu alaikum, and then you realized, wait a minute, I'm in my second rak'ah, you still continue. Because we have a specific hadith that addresses that.
But I have to do sajda.
You have to do sajdatay sahw, yes. Because you added something to salah by saying as-salam. You should not have said as-salam after the tashahhud, but since you accidentally said as-salam, your salah is valid. Yes, brother.
What if it's like jama'ah and the person leading the prayer makes a mistake?
If it is jama'ah, and the one leading the prayer makes the mistake, but those who are praying behind him do not make the mistake, right? Let's say he says accidentally, as-salam, not them. After salah, only he has to do sajdatay sahw, not the people who prayed behind him. Yes, if they repeated after him when he said as-salam, and they also said as-salam, they have to do sajdatay sahw as well. But it's only on the one who did that mistake. Now, speaking about sajdatay sahw, there's a very important theological discussion over here. And this is something that in Islamic beliefs, when we talk about prophethood, we address this. There are ahadith, mainly in Sunni sources, such as Bukhari and others, and also even in some Shia sources, that the Prophet ﷺ committed sahw in salah. He made mistakes in his prayer, and to correct that mistake, he did sajdatay sahw. For example, we have the famous incident, which Bukhari and others talk about it, in which once the Prophet ﷺ was praying Salatul Dhuhr. Another version of the story states, no, he was praying at night, Maghrib or Isha. In any case, he was praying one of the wajib prayers, either Dhuhr or Isha. Then the Prophet accidentally, instead of praying 4 rak'ahs for that Dhuhr or Isha prayer, he ended his salah at the second rak'ah. The companions were confused. What happened? Why did the Prophet shorten his salah? But they were embarrassed to ask him, right? They didn't have the courage to ask him, as one version, I think in Bukhari or another source states, until one companion by the name of Dhul Yadayn, he asks the Prophet, he tells him, Ya Rasulullah, did you receive wahi, revelation in your salah, commanding you to shorten your salah? Or did you make a mistake? The Prophet was very disturbed. He was angry, according to these versions of these hadiths. And he had rested his head on some wood, on something in the masjid. He got very upset and agitated why he made that mistake. Then he got up and he just continued 2 rak'ahs. And then he did sajdatay sahw. We do have such hadiths even in some Shia sources, even though you find these reports mainly in Sunni sources. How do we address something like that, which we have in our books, that is claiming the Prophet ﷺ made a mistake in his salah and he did sajdatay sahw? First of all, do we accept this view? Do we accept any of these hadiths?
No.
We don't. Why?
Doesn't make sense.
Prophet doesn't make mistakes like that.
First of all, we have rational, intellectual, and religious evidence that the Prophet does not make a mistake. Now, the details of that is something we discussed last year in Islamic beliefs in the Aqa'id class. So I will not get into the details. But we have evidence, rational, intellectual evidence, number one. Number two, religious evidence from Quran and accepted hadith that the Prophet ﷺ does not make mistakes. So those pieces of evidence contradict these claims and hadiths that the Prophet made a mistake in his salah. So we don't accept them. Whenever you have something that is established by the intellect and by irrefutable religious evidence and something else contradicts it, you just don't take these hadiths. By the way, we also have sahih hadiths in our books which refute this. For example, there is a hadith from Zurara. It's a valid hadith, it's an authentic hadith. He narrates this hadith from Al-Imam Abu Ja'far alayhi salam. Who's Abu Ja'far? No. Al-Imam al-Ja'far, Al-Imam al-Sadiq, he himself is Ja'far ibn Muhammad. Who's Abu Ja'far? Al-Imam al-Baqer alayhi salam. He says, سألت أبا جعفر عليه السلام هل سجد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله سجدتي السهو? I asked the Imam alayhi salam, Al-Imam al-Baqer, did the Messenger of God sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, did he ever do the sujud of sahu? Meaning, did he ever make a mistake such that he had to do the sujud of the sahu? What did the Imam alayhi salam state? He says, La wala yasjuduha faqih. He says, no. And a faqih meaning, it's a reference to the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, those chosen by Allah who know Islamic law 100%, they never offer sajdatay sahu because they never make a mistake to begin with. So we have a sahih hadith that's contradicting those other hadiths. So the most thing that we could say, we have two conflicting hadiths. They contradict each other, they cancel each other out. So we don't have any evidence that the Prophet committed any mistake in his salah. Now you could be asking us the question, but why do we have these hadiths in Shia sources, right? We know that there were some people who forged and fabricated these hadiths. And yes, mainstream Sunnis have accepted them, but why do we have them in our books? One answer that our scholars have given was taqiyya. We talked about taqiyya last year. Basically, this idea that the Prophet made a mistake in salah was the mainstream Sunni view at the time of the Imams. Now this was a very sensitive point because the rulers at the time, they wanted Muslims to believe that the Prophet made mistakes. Why? How does that serve them? Exactly. Because that allows them to justify their own mistakes. If the Messenger of God goofed in salah, which is so important, right? So what? We'll make mistakes too. Be lenient with us. Doesn't mean we're not qualified rulers. It was a way to justify their own mistakes. So they wanted Muslims to believe that even the Prophet ﷺ can make mistakes. It's fine, it's okay. Now, when this became the mainstream view, the Shias, of course, the Imams of Ahlul Bayt rejected this. But sometimes they were put on the spot and there were spies who were present in their gatherings. And so the Imam ﷺ would be asked the question in a public gathering in which there are spies appointed by the government listening to the conversations. So the Imam would be asked the question. If the Imam ﷺ would give the real response that the Prophet does not make a mistake, this would have made the rulers of the time persecute the Imam and kill the Shia and persecute them. Because now they're challenging them and their authority and their opinion. So the Imam ﷺ, for the sake of the followers of Ahlul Bayt, to protect them from danger, the Imams sometimes in such gatherings, they would state statements like this. That yes, okay, the Prophet did this. But then the Imam later would explain to his followers that I said that in taqiyya circumstances. And by the way, last year we also examined the validity of taqiyya. You know, does the Quran allow you to such things sometimes to hide the truth in order to protect yourself? We talked about that. And we cited evidence from the Quran and from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that actually validates that. So even if we have these hadiths in our books, even if it's proven the Imam did really say them, which is doubtful. We don't know if the Imam really said it. But assuming he did, it was done under taqiyya for the protection of the Shia community. And if you remember last year when we talked about wudu in this class in Islamic law, we talked about the story of which companion of the Imam? The companion of Al-Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam, in which the Imam taught him to do the wudu according to the other schools of thought, not according to the Shia school of thought. What was the name of that companion? Ali ibn Yaqtin. For those of you who attended last year, when we examined the chapter on wudu, we talked about his incident and his story. And that's how the Imam ﷺ saved his life. It's a very interesting story that happened. So this was issued under taqiyya. In any case, we do not accept any of those claims that the Prophet ﷺ made a mistake in his salah and he did the sujud of sahw. Any questions on that? Now let's go to page 198 of the book, for those of you who have the book. The author here basically gives us some bullet points when it comes to mistakes in salah. Some of it is a summary of what we've discussed, and some of it is just some brief rulings about making a mistake in salah or acts of salah. Number one, this is a summary of what we examined before. In the first point, the author examines that cutoff point, which is the ruku', for instance. Whenever you make a mistake, which is not in one of the pillars, you forget a tashahhud, you forget one sajda, if you have not reached the next cutoff point, which is the ruku', the following ruku', then you go back and fix that mistake. A common example is the following. You're in your, for example, first rak'ah, second rak'ah. You're in your second rak'ah. After the two sujuds, what are you supposed to do in the second rak'ah? Tashahhud. You forgot. Instead of doing the tashahhud, you stood up to the third rak'ah. Before you reach the ruku', you're saying subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar. Before you reach the ruku', you remembered, I skipped the tashahhud. What do? You have to go back, right? You have to go down, do the tashahhud, and then get up and continue.
And repeat.
Why? Yes, you repeat the recitation of the tasbihat, of course, because you have to have the proper sequence. Why are you allowed to do that? Because you have not reached the cutoff point, which is what? Ruku'. You have not done a pillar yet. As long as you have not done a following pillar, you go back and fix the mistake. However, if you remembered that you forgot the tashahhud while in the state of ruku', so you reached that cutoff point, what happens then? Do you go back?
No.
You don't go back and fix it. Why? Exactly, because if you go back and fix it and bring the tashahhud, then you get up and do the tasbihat, and then you go to ruku', that's a second ruku'. So you added a pillar, you invalidated the salah. And we don't want to invalidate the salah, right? You're fixing the tashahhud, but you're invalidating the salah. So you haven't achieved anything, right? So that's why it's important to always consider the cutoff point. Whenever you skip anything and you remember before the ruku', fix it. You have to fix it.
Even if you skip sajda on the second rak'ah, so you have to do...
Exactly. Let's say you got up to the third rak'ah, and then in the ruku' of that rak'ah, you remembered, I forgot a sajda.
Before that.
If it's before the ruku'. If it's before the ruku', that means you have not reached the cutoff point. You remembered, I did only one sajda, not two. What do you do in this case? You go back and do that sajda.
You do tashahhud second time.
And you do the tashahhud. Why? Because you have to keep the sequence.
Then you have to do sajdatay sahw because you did an extra tashahhud. That's my main question.
You have to do sajdatay sahw, yes. In this case, you do sajdatay sahw.
So you fix it and...
Yes. So you fix it, later you do sajdatay sahw. Now, if you remembered that in the state of ruku', while doing the ruku' in the third rak'ah, you're like, wait a minute, in my previous rak'ah I just did one sujud. Do you go back and fix it? No. What do? After salah, what do? You do sajdatay sahw. What else? You do the qada of that sajda. So remember that cutoff point. When it comes to the cutoff point, then this is what you have to do. And this is what the author talks about.
So why is it called Sajdatay al-Sahw? Isn't it one?
No, it's two sajdas.
If you go down one time, you say Allah.
If you make a mistake in salah and you're doing sajdatay sahw, that Bismillahi wa billah, Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabiyyu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, you do that twice.
You go down, and then you
Yes,
go up and then down.
yes, it's two sajdas. Yes, sister.
I know we're talking about making mistakes and forgetting, What if you catch yourself being inattentive in like a surah or someplace and you're like, wait a minute, I just recited something and I wasn't paying attention. Do you recite it again, or is there?
If someone recites the surah or any part of prayer and then you find yourself inattentive and you're like, I wasn't even paying attention to what I read. If you recited it, you're sure that you recited it properly, then you continue, you don't repeat it.
But if you catch yourself thinking about something and you're spiritually not there, what do?
You can go back and recite, even though many scholars advise against that, because once you've recited it properly, then you just continue. Okay. In order to fix something like that, the hadith recommends praying the nafilah. The nafilah compensates for your distractions in the faridah. So whenever you find yourself, I was not that attentive in this prayer, then the wisest thing to do is to pray the nafilah. The nafilah will compensate. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say, I'll accept your salatul dhuhr asr fully because you did the nafilah. So that's one way to go about it.
Can you spend 5 minutes and go on the list of when do you recite the nafilahs?
Sister, we can do that after class, because last year we did talk about the nafilah in detail and we examined the timings of the nafilah, what's mustahab and what's not. But we can do that after class, inshallah. I would happy to go through the nafilah again. So, the first thing to keep in mind about the sahw and making a mistake is that cutoff point. So this is what the author talks about in the first point. Let's go to the third point that he mentions on page 198. This one is an interesting point, but it requires us to really concentrate to see how Islamic law works over here. It's very interesting, but please bear with me for a few moments because it's very technical and detailed. Before I explain to you what the author is discussing here, let me give you an example so we know what the author is talking about. Those who took legal theory last year, we talked about al-ilm al-ijmali, summary knowledge. That's the translation that we gave to al-ilm al-ijmali. Those who took legal theory, does anyone remember what ilm al-ijmali is? And can you give me a quick example, if you remember? To refresh your memory, we gave the example of 2 cups. One of them, you know for sure a drop of najasa fell in it. So do you now remember the example?
You spilled the cup which has the
So I have 2 cups in front of me of water. I know that a drop of blood fell in one of them, but I don't know which. Now the law of summary knowledge, ilm al-ijmali, what does it dictate over here? Can you drink one of them? Can you do wudu with one of them? No, why not? Because the law of precaution states, you have 2 cups before you. You know one of them became najis, but you don't know which. As a precaution, avoid both of them. This is the law of precaution. We examined it in detail in legal theory and also in this class. So this is a very quick example of ilm al-ijmali. Now let me give you 2 similar examples and then we'll apply it to the ruling over here. Let's say you know that you have to do one of these obligations. I'll give you a common example. Let's say you did a nadhr, a vow. If Allah grants me so and so, or if Allah heals me from so and so, I will do an act. And you make that vow with Allah. Later, you forget exactly what your niyyah was. What is it that you promised God to do? So you remember that I either made a nadhr, a vow, to pay $100 sadaqah and gift it to the soul of al-Banin, for example, or I would pray Salatul Layl. You know it's definitely one of these 2 that you made your nadhr, but you don't know which. The law of precaution, the law of ilm al-ijmali, summary knowledge, what does it dictate here? Can you just do one of them and say, inshallah, that's the one? No. You have to do both. Why do you have to do both?
You have to fulfill your nadr.
See, the reason why you have to do both according to the rational law of ilm al-ijmali, of precaution, is that you know when you did that nadr, an obligation is on your neck. It came on your shoulders. You were obliged to do something. Now the only way for you to know 100% that you are released and relieved from this obligation is by doing both of them, right? Once you do both of them, you pay that $100 and you pray Salatul Layl, then you're like 100%, I fulfilled my obligation. If it was A, I did it. If it was B, I did it. That way you know you fulfilled your obligation. But if you do only one of them, have you fulfilled your obligation? No. Is this example clear? Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, brother.
In general, does nadr affect your faith? Or
Does it affect your faith? Meaning if you don't fulfill it?
yeah, like
Oh, does it affect your faith?
yes.
Absolutely. We believe that when you do another vow with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it increases the chances of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responding to you.
Because I read in a Sunni book that it doesn't affect, so I just want to see what the Shia.
No, it does. That's why the Imams of Ahlul Bayt have recommended this to us. That if you really need something from Allah, one of the factors that will make your dua answered and for you to get what you want is to do another for it. Yes, it does. It increases those chances. Yes.
Mother of Maryam did it.
Now, the nadr of Maryam was slightly different. Basically, she dedicated Maryam, her mother, dedicated her to the temple. That's a type of dedication, a type of nadr. It is a type of nadr, yes. However, the nadr that we're talking about right now, it's slightly different. Yes, brother.
Is there like a certain thing you gotta say for the nadr, or you just make your intention?
Yes, for the nadr, in order for it to be religiously binding and for you to do a proper nadr, you have to say the proper Arabic phrase, Lillahi alayya, to do so and so. You know, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants me so and so. If you don't say that, Lillahi alayya, many scholars say that's not a binding nadr. Meaning you still did a contract between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but if you did not observe it, there's no kafara, for example. The proper nadr, we'll get to nadr, you know, inshallah, maybe next year or the following year in Islamic law, because Islamic law is very comprehensive. We have the yameen, right? Which is the oath. We have the nadr. In order for a nadr to be religiously binding, you would have to say, Lillahi alayya. That is the proper statement for the nadr. Yes. So, you all get the example of the nadr, right? If you don't know which obligation you have to fulfill, but you know it's one of these two. It's either this or that, but it's definitely one of them. Take the second example now. Let's say you doubt whether you did a nadr to begin with. You might have done a nadr. You might not have. You don't know. It's a 50-50, it's a 60-40, you don't know. You're thinking, you're like, I can't really recall whether I did a nadr or not. I might have, I might not have. In this case, do you have to fulfill the nadr? No. Why?
It's not considered if you didn't say Lillahi alayk.
You may have said it.
Because you don't.
You're doubting.
You're not sure, but you're not sure.
You're not sure. So why is it that when you're not sure, there's no binding obligation on you? See, because in this case, the law of precaution, of ilm al-ijmali, summary knowledge, does not apply. You don't have an either-or situation like the previous one. Either this is my obligation or that one. But I know there's definitely an obligation. Over here, you don't know that there's an obligation on you. You don't know. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. So the law of exemption here takes effect in Islamic law. We call that bara'ah, the law of exemption. The law of exemption says, whenever you doubt, is there something on me or no, and you don't have knowledge, certainty, you assume that you're off the hook and there is no obligation. This is called the law of exemption.
If you have another, but you're not sure if you observe your another.
Okay, if you know that you did another, but you do not know if you fulfilled it already or not, what does the law of precaution state? You have to do it. Again, Because you know for a fact another
Is a binding.
was binding on you. But you don't know if you released yourself from that another. So you have to do it as a precaution to make sure that you released it. Yes, that in that case, so see, why does the law of precaution apply there? Because you have knowledge that there was something binding on me. You have knowledge of that, right? It's yaqeen that one day I did that another, but you doubt, did I release myself from that another or no? The law of precaution takes effect. But in the example that I mentioned, you don't know whether you even made a vow with Allah or not. So can you say with full certainty that definitely something came on my neck? Definitely something binding came on me? Can you say that? Can you? Why not? Because you don't know if you did another or not. Maybe you did, you never did one. Right? So the law of exemption takes effect over here.
But it's hard in this case if you have another 10 years ago.
You have to relieve yourself from it. So you have to think and think and think.
Or start writing all your numbers.
And yes, you should write all your nethers down, by the way. Write them down so in the future you don't forget them and you get confused and then you will have to redo many of them. So yes, check them off to make sure that they are fulfilled. Yes, brother.
What if you make another that you just later on realize you can't fulfill? It's impossible.
If it's impossible to fulfill it, you don't have the capacity, then you're released from it. The method applies if you have the physical capability to do it. Yes. Yes, brother.
If you won't be able to do another, should you pay kafara for it?
If one is no longer able to do the nether, meaning they don't have the physical capacity, then no, that's it. They're just relieved from it. Violating the nether calls for the kafara. Yes.
So do you have to wait till your wish is fulfilled to do the nazar, or you can just...
The nether becomes binding when your wish is fulfilled. So wait till it's fulfilled, then you do the nether.
Can I go ahead and
Don't do it before, because if you do it before and it's fulfilled, you'll have to do it again. Because that's the statement you made with Allah. That if you grant me so and so, then I will do. See, that's the type of nether that you made. Having said that, let's apply this to the concept over here. The author in number 3 on page 198 talks about this very fundamental point. You know, in one salah, in salat al-dhuhr, you know for a fact that you skipped 2 sajdas. But this is something that you know for sure. But what you do not know is whether those 2 sajdas were in the same unit, rak'ah, or one sajda from one unit and the second sajda from another unit. Why does it make a difference? Because if you skipped 2 sujuds in one rak'ah, what did you skip? A rukun. And what happens when you skip a rukun? Invalidates your salah. But if you skipped a sajda from unit 1 and a sajda from unit 2, did you skip a rukun? You did not skip a rukun. So what do you have to do? Qada. Do sajdatay sawa and then qada. Just do 2 sajdas with the niyyah of qada and your salah is good to go.
So you have to do 2 sajdatay sawa for each
Because you missed
sajda?
two.
Or just
We'll talk about that. Whether you have to do 1 sajdatay sawa or 2 for each one. So now you have knowledge, certainty, ilm ijmali, summary knowledge, that I skipped 2 sajdas for sure. But what you do not know, what you cannot recall is the following. Was it from 1 rak'ah which invalidates the salah? Or is it from 2 rak'ahs which will not invalidate the salah? What do we do in this case?
I'll do qada sajda sahw and repeat my salah.
Okay, the sister says you do qada of sajda, you do the qada of the sajda, the qada of the sajda, and you repeat your salah. That is like the full precaution, right? Because if my salah was invalid, because I skipped the 2 sajdas from 1 rak'ah, I'm doing a new salah. And if my salah was valid, because I skipped a sajda from different units, I did the qada of those sajdas. So that is the law of precaution. Now the question is, why can't I make the argument, the following argument? If right now you prayed, after finishing your salah, and remember last year we talked about the law of completion, قاعدة الفراغ. If you pray after finishing your salah, you doubt, was my salah valid or no? In fact, let me ask you the following. You finished your salah, then you started having doubts. Did I skip a ruku or no? It's a doubt. Did I skip a ruku or no? What's the status of your salah? What's the status of your salah? It's valid. Even though you might have skipped a ruku. In reality, you might have. But as long as it's a doubt, your salah is what? Valid. In our example over here, you know you skip 2 sujuds. If they're from different units, you're good. Salah is valid. If those 2 sajdas are from one unit, the salah is invalid because you skipped a rukun. Now you don't know. So basically, one could argue, you finished your salah and you have a doubt. Did I invalidate my salah or no? Do you know for a fact you skipped a rukun? You don't. So why can't you just assume that your salah is valid?
Because there's still a percentage that I did skip a rukun. It's still there.
Well, in my first example, if you just doubt you skipped a ruku'. The hadith of faragh, qa'idat al-faragh, the law of completion says whenever you finish your salah and you doubt about anything in salah, rukun, non-rukun, it doesn't matter. You doubt. What do? Assume your salah is valid. Right? That's what the law of completion, qa'idat al-faragh states. A hadith from the Imam says that. Whenever you finish the salah, you say, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You start doubting. Did I do a ruku'? Did I not? Did I pray 5? Did I pray 6? Did I pray 3? Doubts. After salah, not in salah. After salah, you get these doubts. The law of completion says, ignore all these doubts. Your salah is valid. Well, why can't we apply that here? After your salah, in reality you're doubting, did I skip a rukun? If those 2 sajdas happen to be in 1 rak'ah, or I did not skip a rukun. So in reality I just have a doubt. Why can't I apply the law of completion here?
Because I'm sure I skipped sajdatain.
Yeah, but you don't know from which rak'ah.
But you still made a mistake. You know you made a mistake. It's not a doubt that if you made a mistake, but you know.
You know you made a mistake, but you do not know that that mistake invalidates the salah for sure. So you don't have proof that your salah is invalid. So you just have a doubt that my salah is valid or not. So the law of completion says, whenever you have a doubt, just ignore your doubt.
You just said you know you made a mistake.
Yeah. You know
So
you
it's no
made a
longer a
mistake.
doubt if you know.
Okay, let me ask you the following question. Let's say you finished your salah, and then somebody told you, you made a mistake in your salah. And you ask him, what kind of a mistake did I make? He's like, I'm not going to tell you, bye. So you know for a fact you made a mistake. Do you have to do anything? You don't have to do. Your salah is valid because you don't know that you invalidated your salah. You only have to repeat your salah if you know for a fact that your salah was invalidated. Here's the reason why in this case you have to repeat the salah. Because in this case, what is making this salah invalid is that there is an additional obligation. See, if we did not have the qada of the sajda as an obligation, we could have just said your salah is valid, who cares? Don't pay attention to this doubt. But once the qada of the sajda, this is very technical, once the qada of the sajda comes into the equation, the law of precaution says you have to do both. See, in the case that we're examining, you know you made a mistake. Okay, so what? So what if I made a mistake? I skipped 2 sajdas. Okay, what happens? The one who skips 2 sajdas, but does not know which from which rak'ah, has to do one of these obligations. The first one is what? Repeat the salah. Why would you have to repeat the salah if you skipped the 2 sajdas
In the same.
as a rukun in 1 rak'ah? Right? So if those 2 sajdas came from 1 rak'ah, then you've skipped a rukun, then you would have to repeat the salah if that were the case. Let's say that's not the case. You skipped 2 sajdas from 2 different rak'ahs. What's your obligation? Do the qada of those sajdas, right? So the other obligation that you have is qada of sajdas. You do the qada of the sajdas and then of course sajdatay sahw. But we're talking about the qada. Now here's the intellect. The intellect, the law of precaution says, look, you made a mistake. Now you have one of these obligations to fulfill. Either you have to repeat your salah if what? If you skip the 2 sajdas from 1 rak'ah as a pillar. Or you have to do the qada of the sajdas if what? You skip the 2 sajdas from 2 rak'ahs. Now it's like that nidhr situation. I don't know. Do I have to pay $100 or do I have to pray Salat al-Layl? Now you're before 2 obligations. You know one of them's on your neck. One of these 2 is definitely on me. Because I know I skipped 2 sajdas. What does the law of precaution state when you know there's 2 obligations before you and one of them applies to you? What does the law of precaution state? You have to do 2 of them, both of them, to make sure you're relieved.
If you repeat your salah, why you have to do the other one? Because you're going to repeat your salah anyway.
Yeah.
Why you have to do the other one?
We'll talk about that. But do you see as an initial step why you would have to do them both? Now if there was no qada of sajda in the equation, let's say there wasn't any qada for skipping a sujud. Let's just say. It was like talking. There's nothing really that you have to do. Right? Let's say there was no qada. And you're only left before this. If I skipped 2 sajdas from 1 rak'ah, I would have to repeat the salah, it's invalid. But if I skipped 2 sajdas from 2 different rak'ahs, I don't have to do anything. Let's say that was the case in Islamic law. Then this would be just a doubt. Did I invalidate my salah? Did I not? The law of exemption says, the law of completion says just continue. But because you have to do the qada for the missed sajda, you get a second obligation in the picture, and now you're before 2 obligations. You know one of them for sure applies. That's why you have to observe both of them. This is called ilm al-ijmali. Do you see that? Do you see ilm al-ijmali, how it's applied over here? Now the brother is asking, well, if you repeat the salah, why do the 2 sajdas? That's a good question. Scholars have mentioned 2 things. First of all, scholars have said, in this case, just repeat the salah. No need to do the qada of the 2 sajdas. Why? Because in your salah, you're doing 2 sajdas. So you did 2 sajdas, right? So you did the qada of the 2 sajdas. So no need to do additional 2 sajdas because your salah has 8 sajdas anyway, the 4 rak'ah one. So you did it. That's what some scholars state. But here's why we have an issue over here. If in reality your obligation was to do the 2 sajdas, repeating the salah would not suffice. Because who asked you to repeat the salah? You can't just repeat the salah like that. There must be a command for you from Sharia to pray for you to fulfill that command. If there is no command to repeat the salah, and there is only what? And there is only the obligation to bring the 2 sajdas. That's the only thing that you can do. Repeating the salah would not suffice.
So isn't that the command that you are sure that you missed your rukun and then you are going to repeat it? Isn't that a command?
The command that you missed a rukun for sure? Well, we don't know if we missed a rukun for sure.
If you're sure.
If you're sure you missed, yes. If you are sure you missed a rukun, then you know your salah is invalid. When the salah is invalid, it did not fulfill that command from Sharia to pray. So it's like you never did anything, so you have to repeat your prayer. That is a different scenario, because you know there is a command. And by the way, just the last minute over here, there is something that people do which is a little bit problematic. Salat al-Jama'ah can only be prayed if you know if the salah is wajib, right? Let's say you find people doing on Laylatul Qadr, the 100 rak'ah, people do it Jama'ah of qada, right? You've seen a lot of people do that. Let's say I don't know for a fact that I have qada. I'm just doing it as a precaution. Maybe I have qada. Let me pray jama'ah with them. Can you do that? Many scholars have said you can't. Why? Because Salat al-Jama'ah can only be prayed if it's wajib. If you don't know that there's qada on you, that salah is not wajib. So you can't pray at Jama'ah.
Not even precaution?
Not even as precaution. Because Salat al-Jama'ah can only prayed in a known wajib prayer. If you doubt whether you have qada on you or not, then you don't know the prayer that you're praying is mustahab or wajib, so you can't pray it in Jama'ah. Because you don't know there's a command to pray this Jama'ah. Same idea over here. Same idea over here. We'll take your question right after class. So the idea over here is that if you know you definitely skipped 2 sajdas, but you do not know whether they were from 1 rak'ah or from 2 rak'ahs, that salah is invalid. Basically, you have to, as a precaution, pray another salah, repeat. And many scholars say also do the qada of the 2 sajdas in case you did not break that rukun.
What's the niyyah for the second salah if you need to redo it?
So then the niyyah for the second salah, for you to do it, you get up and you say, I pray salat al-dhuhr qurbatan ila Allah ta'ala, or liraja' al-matlubiyya, or bima fi dhimma. All these basically mean if I'm required to pray them. If there's anything on me, I'm praying it. You don't have to verbally state this, just keep that in mind. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.